Hello and welcome to Cindershadow Gaming. I'm your host Cindershadow, and today we've got a story time. Well, a friend of mine suggested me as a video topic to try and talk about where I came from, and there's been times where I've almost put pen to paper to even write the story of what I've gone through in my life. And there's been ups and downs, and more downs than ups, and more ups than downs, and all dependent on which way you're looking at things. Right now, my life is pretty good in comparison. I know there is the stuff that we're going through with the Alberta government here in Edmonton with my health and a petition that has been started, which I will probably link after in the comments. But there's a petition out there for my medication and all this other stuff, but that's not the purpose of this video. This video is more to just tell you guys a little bit more about myself, who I am, how I've come to be how I am, and why I just don't quit. No matter what I do, I just get back up and I don't quit. I can kind of take a page out of Captain America's book where we can do this all day, and that's why I just get back up, get on my horse, and try and ride off into the sunset yet again. It's the nuance of it all and where things have gone, how ups and downs really do make who you are. Through today, I see a lot of turmoil. I see the world turning, and it's not something that I ever thought I would be in, the situation where I have an audience that I can speak to directly and really tell you guys what I've gone through. And my tale is quite different. It's not your typical everyday tale. It's not where you grow up in a family. It's not where you grow up on drugs or have alcohol dependency or things that honestly I should really have at this point with a very fragile mental state. And things have gotten that fragile, but I've never pushed myself over the edge. It's things have gone up and down, and you know, there's been people that I've been very mad at over time, but I tend to try and walk away from it instead of coming to fisticuffs or anything like that. And it's not who I am. I don't like to be a physical fighter of things. I would rather sit there and yell and scream and tell guys how and tell you what it's like and everything like that. I suppose my story probably starts back when I was very young, the age of my child now. He's only 4, and I know how much he has in front of him, and how at my age of 4, how things really kind of did get flipped upside down. And I come from a family that tend to have dependency on vices and drugs and much more. And my dad being from, my understanding, Montreal, but not really knowing who he is. He left when I was very young. I don't know the reasoning behind it. All I know is he left a card and a $50 note for my grandmother to have. That kind of led me on a path to where I am today. And my grandmother actually fought for custody over me when I was very young. At the time, my mom wasn't capable or mentally capable of dealing with me and raising a child at the time, and my grandmother more than willingly was, and I am very thankful for that. And if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have the opportunities that I have today. And God bless her heart, she did pass away back in '96, and when that happened, it created a catalyst of things, and where things did go off the rails for quite a while, and I'm still kind of picking up those pieces. And there's much to debate on where things were back then. At the time, my grandmother's health was failing. She in and out of the hospital, and she was only 59, and she passed away in her sleep. I was over at a friend's. I was only 16, and I got a call from my mom to come home because my mother had actually moved back home with her boyfriend at the time, and there was some squabbles and some inconsistencies. I was 16, a very unknowing teenager, not knowing where my mental health could go and how emotions do take over, and how things are. And it was not a place that I found very enjoyable at my time of youth. And so I spent more of my time with my friends and away from home. And when that call came in, I ended up rushing home. It was a devastating time in my time, because I knew what challenges would face in front of me and how things would not seemingly be going that great. We were living in a two-story house at the time, and unfortunately, with the way things went, my biological uncle was dictator of the will, and him and his wife decided to split things the way they felt and take and sell the house. And my mom was faced with the decision of taking me in a apartment with my little brother at the time, who is 11 years younger than me. And it just was not a situation that didn't seem right. It didn't seem where I would go, and over a simple meal, it was done. I had left, and I was facing the streets. And when I was 16, the streets were what I called home for about 4 months at the time, and I ended up in a pseudo foster care through them. It was a program put on by the government that it wasn't exactly the type of thing that I thought was what I was getting into. It was the person I lived with was more than willing to open their home to me, and I do look back at that time every once in a while, and I really look at it as just a blink in all the situation that I was put in. I was there for about 6 months, and things just didn't jive. I wasn't. It really came down to where they were running a business, and they really wanted me to try and do dishes for that business and do things that I didn't feel necessarily that I should have been. It wasn't that they were expecting me to not get paid or anything like that. It's just I felt like it wasn't a situation that I was asked to be put in. And then I decided, no, this was not for me. It was not the best situation at the time, and I ended up moving in with a friend of mine that was roughly my age at his place with his mom, and I was able to get some support through the government and pay his mom a little bit of money. And it wasn't until I came home one day that he flipped out on me over a simple sink of dishes that I had nothing to do with. It was upsetting, and at the same time, I ended up back on the streets for about 3 to 4 more months before I was able to get assistance to get my own place at the age of 17. At the age of 17, you know, you're not quite there. You're not where you want to be in life. You're facing a lot of adversity when you've got to get your own apartment. You've got to have the government having your back at that point, and really filling in the blanks on what you don't know. I ended up picking up a job as a grocery clerk at at the local food store, which was quite a ways away. It took me an hour by bus to get there, and there was no service on a Sunday in this city of Edmonton. It's not something that I dabbled in very easily. It wasn't very easy to get there, especially when you're there for about 8 months, and the person that hired you on went on maternity leave just to come back and tell you that your hours are being cut because you can't make it there on a Sunday because you're a 17-year-old that takes the bus without a vehicle in the middle of nowhere. Things didn't seem to go my way, but, I still moved forward and got a different job. And that's where I worked at a different, it was a warehouse in a store in a mall. And I was there for about 5 years. And that's where I ended up moving in with my friends. We ended up getting a 3-bedroom apartment. We've lived together for quite a while. And those were probably some of the better days. And really where I dove into gaming, if I wasn't working, if I wasn't able to go out with a couple other friends to have a night on the town, we were literally waking up and playing D&D, escaping the worlds of reality. And I was more than willing to jump into those things because it let me forget the stuff that I'd gone through. It let me forget how tough life really can be. And just the way things go along. And it's just being able to have friends and being able to play games and escape reality. That's really where things have always been. And that's why I still play games today. It's something that I do to walk away from the everyday world, to forget my troubles and to forget what goes on in everything else. And those days that I was on the streets, it was 7 months altogether, and I stayed at a place that was called the Youth Emergency Shelter, or Youth Emergency Social Services Shelter, which is now known as the Youth Empowerment Social Services. It's a very interesting place to have to call home. You live in bunk beds with a pseudo roommate that always, and your personal items are always up for grabs. When I did leave home, I left home with a box of magic cards and a couple books. And honestly, that's all I had. I didn't even have the clothing on my back. It was a jacket and a couple articles of clothing. And when I did get that first place, I was allotted a certain allowance from the government to be able to get clothing and just items, even a bed to sleep on. And it was something else. And I gotta say, if it wasn't for those programs at that time, it wouldn't have been, I probably would have been in a much more dire situation. During that time, I was offered things like $1,000 a day just to be a runner of goods that were illicit and not something that I ever stuck to. I stuck to my guns and said, no, I'm going to do this honestly and not do this in such a way where I have to really sell myself short of who I really am. And I was able to still see the value in the dollar and make my own way. And that's where I am, and why things are the way they are. And sometimes I have a different outlook on life, and where it's mostly because of where I was and how I am. I remember the days where I was in my own apartment, and the landlord at the time, being a very religious person, left me a note saying I was worshiping demons because I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. It was one of the most funniest things I'd ever read in my life. I still wish I had that to this day, because I really did want to frame it, but the breaks, it gets lost in the shuffle, and that's what happens. These little things that you do go through, it helps grow you, and you really learn from them. And if you have yourself in mind, it doesn't mean you have to turn to illicit things or turn to drugs to help cope with the situations. I have more than a reason to sit there and drink all day and be a completely deadbeat in the world, but I don't. I really did pick myself up from the gutter, and I never really did falter from that. I still had that sense of always being willing and going forward, and it wasn't something that I wanted to really do. And this is why I've wanted for a long time to really tell my story. And I think the channel here is one of the ways that I can do that. And this has really been a glimpse into a little bit that I went through. And if this inspires any of you guys, let me know. I could ramble on and on, but I do want to cut this a little short, and maybe I'll do a part 2 on how things were after the days at the warehouse and where things went from then. We all do draw from our past, and if you can draw from your past and rise stronger, that's the way the things to be. You can always build up from your ashes and really be born anew, and that's one of the reasons why I chose the Phoenix as the avatar of what I really am and who I am and how I grew up and how I took things that really knocked me down and I grew from them. And every time I get knocked down, I really do spring up even stronger. And I hope I can go forward and do much more. And I hope through the channel and through the audience here and everyone that supports me here, I hope I can make everyone proud. And it's part of the reason why I've chosen the new tagline at the end of my videos, the Broad Canadian Phoenix, because really I am Canadian and I am very proud to be who I am. And even though I had a very tough childhood and a tough past and teenage years, I still grew up, and I still am growing up today. I'm being taught by my own little bundle of a 4-year-old crazy child, and I really do see where things are going, and I have a bright future, I hope, ahead of him. So, guys, if you want to support the channel, there is links down below, and I hope you guys get inspired by this, maybe to tell me your own stories of things that you've gone through, and really life just changes, and I hope things are doing well with everyone. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys have a great day. We'll see you all again.